Brianna and welcome back to my channel. So it's been a minute since my last video, and since I saw you last time, I have been diligently working on my next doll, but recently I found myself stuck in doll limbo. Basically, I ordered some supplies that are on back order, and I can't move forward with my doll until I receive my supplies.
Oh well, what are you gonna do?
What am I going to do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get working and make a smaller project with you guys. Back in my Sun Car Tarot video, I made my doll a horse companion using a Nightmare Mare horse doll. I had a lot of fun transforming her into a realistic horse, so much so I bought another Nightmare Mare and started keeping a list of possible horses to make. While I'm stuck in doll limbo, I think it's the perfect time to take on the first horse on my list, and that's a character named Nightmare Moon from a little cartoon series called My Little Pony. Now, if you aren't familiar with the show, a quick backstory is there once was a pony princess named Luna who would make the moon rise to start nighttime. Eventually, the loneliness of being alone all night corrupted her and turned her into the evil Nightmare Moon. Since Nightmare Mare is an adult-sized horse, instead of making the pony-sized Luna, I thought it'd be fun to make Nightmare Moon. And besides, with all of her intricate and cool bad guy armor, I think Nightmare Moon is the more interesting out of the two. So let's get started on our evil horse repaint adventure together. To create our Nightmare Moon, I'm going to transform this Nightmare Mare doll. I wanted to use this doll because it blends realistic horse features, but at the same time, it has some exaggerated features that I think will work for creating a realistic version of a cartoon character. To turn this horse from one nightmare into another, we're going to have to prep it a little bit, starting with taking off the factory paint from her eyes. I'm using some pure acetone with a cotton pad to remove it, but I did notice that the acetone affected the plastic a bit, so be careful if you're making over your own Nightmare Mare doll. My Nightmare doll is secondhand, and her mane and tail have seen better days. I've rerouted a Nightmare Mare before, but I really want to use her original hair because it's a pretty good interpretation of Luna's spirit-like tail and mane, which has different shades of purples going through it. I definitely want to give my doll's hair a bit of a refresh, so off camera I followed Jarmopoly123's tutorial on how to restore Saran doll hair, which I will link in the description. Her mane is so sleek and shiny now, and I'm really happy that she'll get to keep her original locks. But now that her hair is back to looking beautiful, we're going to cover it up to protect it from all the sealants and pigments that we're going to be using during the repaint process. First step, I'm making sure that I'm binding up her hair really well, and then I'm going to be covering it as much as possible with masking tape. I might have to do some styling again once we take the tape off, but I wanted to do the hair restore first because it involved using boiling hot water and I didn't want to accidentally remove any of my work later. And for a bit of good news, I don't have to change her base color, so for the last bit of prep work, I'm going to strap on my new respirator and give her 3 coats of Mr. Super Clear Sealant outside. Alright every pony, let's get started on giving her a magical new coat. Looking at reference pictures of Nightmare Moon, I see different color variations in her coat that range from blues, purples, and gray tones. Since this doll is blue, we're going to be able to use that to our advantage in creating a multi-tonal coat. For this project, I used pictures of fell ponies to reference how to give depth to a dark colored coat. Fell ponies are black, but if you look closely, you'll see warm brown undertones. The dark colored coat is also really shiny and reflects a lot of light. So jumping back to our doll, I want to mimic the warm brown tones we saw on the fell pony. To do that, I'm using a couple different shades of purples, but I'm not covering the whole horse with them. Instead, I want to leave some parts of the coat the original blue color, and I'll do this on areas that I think would reflect the light, just like those shiny areas on the fell pony's coat. Between the layers of the lighter and darker purples, I sprayed her coat with the sealant again to avoid smudging all of our hard work. Now I'm going to be blocking in where I want to draw her cutie mark. In the show, every pony gets a symbol on their flanks when they discover something that's their special calling, and that's called a cutie mark. In Luna's case, she has a moon with these dark purple splotches. So as you can see, I've sketched in the cutie mark on both sides of her flanks, but before I go ahead and spray on another coat of sealant, I'm going to keep using my watercolor pencils and sketch on some light lines to make it look like she actually has hair. While I draw the lines on, I want to make sure they're following the direction of each area and muscle they're falling on. This will help make it look like it's a naturally growing coat, instead of having the lines go in one direction, which will make the whole thing just look fake. I want to make her coat an even darker color, because in the show it often looks like a dark purplish gray color. So using my soft pastels again, I'm going to give her a couple coats of this dark gray color all over her body. And since we left some areas of her body the original shade of blue, the highlighted areas are still going to be defined after applying this coat of dark gray. Now I want to give her hooves the appearance of the natural ridges that appear on horse hooves. So I'm sketching on some lines in a couple different colors to give them some color variation. Most of her hooves are going to be covered by her boots, but I think this will be a great little detail for the parts that do poke out. And now let's go back to her cutie mark. I roughly filled in her splotches with a magenta watercolor pencil, but now it's time for us to define everything and give it some detailing. First step is taking a light pink color and outlining each of the splotches. Because we're drawing on such a dark color, I want to make sure that the edges are clear and defined for each of her spots. Using the lighter color will make the magenta pop, which will define the spots without making them look too blocky. Next, I'm bringing back some blue and other colors into the cutie mark. I want the cutie mark to look like it's a part of the hair of her coat, so I'll be sketching on some lines to make it look like hair again. So I liked the hair look on the purple parts of the cutie mark, but I didn't like it so much on her little moons. So since she is celestial royalty, I think I can get away with adding some glitter to cover up the moons. I've brushed on some basic Elmer's glue, and I'll be using a really fine grade sparkly white glitter, and I'm going to let the glue completely dry before moving on to our next step. Next, I'll be taking some of my Sculpey gloss and applying it to the hooves so they have that realistic sheen to them. Now we can finally start working on the details of her face. Luna has blue-green eyes, so I'm starting to block those in and trying to make the pupils look like real horse eyes instead of a cartoonish look. Moving on to her eyelashes. In the cartoon, she has purple eyelashes, so that's what we're going to give our doll. But again, with her coat being so dark, I'm applying some white first so I can go over them with our true color later. Now we're going to be giving her eyes some catch lights, but hers are going to be a little unique. In the cartoon, Nightmare Moon has slit pupils, but for our doll, I wanted to go for realistic eyes, so to give them a little bit of an evil gleam, I'm going to add some slit-like catch lights over the pupils. I've let the paint dry completely, and the last little touch for her face up is to add some more of my gloss to the eyes to make them look shiny and realistic. Okay, fillies and gentle colts, as you know, Nightmare Moon just wouldn't be Nightmare Moon without all of her different pieces of armor. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of pattern making to create each piece. I was really lucky, and I found a printout for a Nightmare Moon paper doll that I was able to use to make the boots and her chest piece. The headpiece is pretty close to fitting, but it's going to need a little bit of work to make it just right. I've taped on the parts of the paper doll that work for the headpiece, but I'm going to have to add on to the sides of her helmet to make sure it extends all the way to the mane. Plus, I want to be able to add the signature crescent shapes that's on each side. I'm kind of just figuring it out as I go along, and I'm fitting each section one at a time. I'm taping it all together as I work out the shape of each section of the helmet. After carefully removing the taped up pieces, I'm transferring it over to a piece of paper to create a usable master pattern. Okay, so off camera, I made all the master patterns for the armor pieces, and now I'm going to start tracing them onto some EVA cosplay foam. Right now, I'm tracing the boot patterns that are these wonderful fleur-de-lis shapes. Like her coat, her armor can look like different colors. I've seen it somewhere between white and purple. It just kind of depends on the lighting in the scene. This may be a bit controversial, but my plan is to use the white color of the foam as the base color, and I'm going to add this iridescent blue-purple paint to each of the pieces so that it will look like a different color depending on the light. I like the new shimmer the paint gave it, but I think the foam still looks too flat. So I'm going to take some of this light purple soft pastel color and just go over the edges of each part. I'm doing this to push the purple color a bit so it doesn't just look like a boring old bit of foam. Now to start getting her dressed up in her tacking gear. I'm starting with her boots and gluing on the bottom portion to her hooves. I want to make sure that they dry in the correct places, so I'm going to be gluing them on bit by bit and using some tape to secure them while they dry. Next, let's put on her headpiece. I've secured it using some glue, but the great thing about EVA foam is that it's a heat-form material. So using my heat gun, we're going to heat up the foam bit by bit so that the foam conforms to the shape of her head. For her chest piece, I got a little ahead of myself and I added some rhinestones to it before attaching it to the body. I'm hoping that they don't pop off while I heat it up and move it into position. Even though Nightmare Moon doesn't have sparkles on her armor in the show, I thought it would be nice to add this to my doll to make the armor look special. I like to think that Rarity insisted on giving her armor a makeover. Her helmet is securely in place, and now I want to add some special touches to it. But instead of rhinestones, I'm going to be adding some tiny nail art pearls. The pearls are iridescent, just like the paint we added, and I think that it kind of gives the armor a studded look, which I think fits well with the battle horse theme. And I'm adding some of my larger pearls to the bottoms of her boots to give them a special touch too, and kind of tie everything together. So she just got a bunch of armor, but we're not done with her just yet. Nightmare Moon is an alicorn, which means she has the wings of a Pegasus and the horn of a unicorn. In one of my first videos, I made a harpy doll, and I used a pair of doll-sized black wings. I've come a long way in my doll repainting journey since making that doll, but I had a second pair in my supply that I'm going to convert into Nightmare's wings. On their own, the wings are fine, but there isn't anything special to them. Nightmare is a magical and shimmering celestial being, so I'm going back to using that same iridescent paint that we used on her armor. Instantly, we can see the paint begin to transform each feather and make them look magical. The wings are trimmed with fluffier feathers, but I'm going to do my best to avoid them and apply the paint to both sides of the bottom feathers. Like in the show, I want her wings to sit right behind each of her shoulders, so I'm going to separate the wings. Then we can secure them using some hot glue to give them a strong hold. On to the unicorn part of our alicorn, and I'm using one of my favorite supplies, foam clay. To dye it a dark blue color, I'm just mixing in some blue and black acrylic paints. Now using a chunk of clay, I'm trying to size and shape the horn into the right proportion. I don't want it to be too long for her face or too short. It has to be a powerful horn, but not comically large and distracting. I let the base of the horn dry and firm up for 24 hours, and now I'm going to wrap it with some thinner clay to give it the swirled horn look that Nightmare has in the show. After sizing it up again, I've noticed that it is way too long, so I'm just going to give it a little snip snip to the perfect size. Alright, now I'm going to add some purple to the swirl of the horn, just like her horn has in the show. Now we're going to grab my new best friend, that same iridescent paint that we used on the armor and wings, and we're going to give her horn a generous coating of it. Just like with the wings, I'm adding it to the horn to give it an extra magical touch. Now I'm just going to add a nice glob of hot glue to attach the horn, and I'm making sure to remove any excess that oozes out from the sides. And And lastly, it's finally time to remove the tape from her mane and tail, and hopefully I didn't mess it up too much. There's a little bit of waviness from the elastics we put in, but overall it isn't too bad. I'm just going to take my mini hair straightener to smooth it all out again. I had a lot of fun basically stepping out of my comfort zone and working on a Monster High doll that's not the typical Monster High doll, you know? This was my first time using EVA foam, and I think it was a successful first try. The only thing I might have done differently to the armor was maybe make it more of a purple tone. I do think the iridescent paint looks really lovely on it, and the little tiny pearls really helped to elevate her look. What do you guys think about our Nightmare Moon? What do you like about her, or what do you wish I maybe had done differently? I love hearing from you guys, so let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more horse doll repaints, let me know if you have any ideas for who I should do next. I won't be making any horses for my past doll repaints, but I'm open to more TV shows, movies, or mythology characters, or anything really. Alright, every pony, Nightmare Moon and I need to go learn a little lesson about the elements of harmony, but I'll see you next time with another doll repaint video. Bye!